Hello and welcome back to Things You Didn't Know in Elden Ring. We're on episode 21, and with the update of 1.07 we have new details, new mechanics, bug fixes and so on. So there's a few things we're going to talk about today to do with that, as well as always, things you guys talk about in the comments, be they big details or small, as long as they're interesting and unknown to me, I want to talk about it. So welcome back to the series and today's episode, let's begin. And we're going to start right here actually, where we're in this boss room, not because it's relevant, just because it's a cool background, but as you can see, I have an Ash of War on the side here, which is Kick. When I pull out my weapon, my actual Ash of War is there and ready to go. You know, the Glintstone Pebble, also buffed in this patch. The range of that's crazy. But the Kick, that's what matters. I have huge news. Kick is finally in Elden Ring. As you can see, I can break any shield's posture with one single kick as long as they're blocking when the kick lands. It's as easy as putting my weapon away, then quickly kicking, then pulling it back out and landing that critical. This is vital in all sections of the game where you come across people using shields, be they small, medium, or those great shields. It even works on them. Most importantly, if we're talking PvP, the fingerprint shield, that heavy shield that some people use, which is still a very good build even after the nerfs. You can kick that and break the posture on one kick, which is awesome. Why is this so exciting? Well, it's because this Ash of War, the Kick Ash of War, was absolutely trash in Elden Ring. It really bothered me. Back in the old games, how you would do a kick would be move and then press a light attack at the same time. So I would step forward, press a light attack, and that would do a kick. It was basically your guaranteed good counter to shield or turtle players, which honestly was more of a thing in the older games than I see in Elden Ring. When they removed it from this awkward keybind to move forward and do a light attack at the same time, I understood, like, yeah, it was terrible. And often, even me who's played the games for years knows how to do it, I would occasionally mistime it and throw a punch or an attack instead of kicking. To take it off that and make it an Ash of War that everyone has access to as long as they just have nothing in their main hand, that makes sense to me. But then they made it trash and just didn't work against shields. It's very nice to finally see, after what, like 7+ months, that Kick is doing what it's supposed to, and yeah, I'm very happy to see it. Next up, a hopefully useful note on the Spear Talisman, which might have more uses in your builds than you might realize, something that came to my attention when I did my most recent build with a katana. As you might imagine, this will work well on spears and their unique thrusting attacks, simply increasing the damage of so many spear attacks because they're all relatively tied to thrusting in some way with all of these weapons. But the thing is, it actually applies to other weapons as well. In fact, if it has a thrust attack, that Spear Talisman, simply by having it equipped, will increase the power of these thrusts. So take the katana, for example. The heavy attack is usually a thrusting motion, and this is something that I actively use in PvP with katanas, especially the long ones like the Nagakiba here, because it works so well. Of course, there are other examples of thrusting-based attacks. You know, there are many options available, but then with other weapons, such as the rapier, these are also thrust attacks as well, heavy or light. Even swords have thrust attacks on the heavy attack. You might even be doing a running attack, and that's a thrust as well. So it's well worth knowing that the Spear Talisman, if you're running something that uses thrust that you're actively using, even if it's not maybe the main attacks that you're using, but you do use them occasionally, you might as well increase the damage of it. We're talking about an item you get early in the Crystal Cave here by the lakeside, very much early in the game as you just entered Liurnia. But again, something that would have benefited me in that build that I just learned about. On that note, let's also talk about another talisman that's had some changes in 1.07. The Raw Medallion has been a bit of a weird one for a while, right? Enhances Raw and Breath attacks. Now, here's an aspect of it that just doesn't work, right? You just can't benefit from, say, the Dragon incantations, even though it specifically says Raws and Breath attacks, right? So you'd think it would. Obvious examples of this would be, say, Warcry or the Shriek of Milos, which will be enhanced by that talisman. Now, Regal Roar, which literally has the word raw in it, did not work and was not enhanced by that talisman for some strange reason, as if this weapon needed another reason to be weak. For example, there's this roar called the Starcaller Cry that doesn't say roar in it, right? And this works and is buffed by that talisman. Well, in patch 1.07, they fixed it. They fixed it for Regal Roar specifically for some reason. So now, when you wear that talisman, Regal Roar is made stronger. And while I definitely said in my initial patch look video that I still wasn't convinced by this Ash of War, I will admit that it is a lot better. I've seen a couple people using it in PvP builds, and basically when you do the Ash of War and then follow up, that stamp right there is way quicker, and the follow-up strike is a lot better. So as just a quick display on how this talisman could be worth using, we have the Raw without the talisman, 1,468 damage. Then we have the Raw with the Talisman to increase its damage to 1,852. That was about a 400 damage increase on the Raw, and as this is the basis of this weapon and the damage it does, this is certainly worth using with the improvements that we have. And it may even be a build that I cover very soon because it's relevant in this patch. Next up, an interesting lore detail that I just found very interesting. There's a theory going around right now to do with Godwyn, the Prince of Death. Now, when we look at Godwyn, he's a little bit weird. I don't know. He's kind of changed a little bit since we first saw him. Other than his massive size, he's looking rather fishy, isn't he? Why is he turning into this fish creature? It's a big question. And perhaps he's not turning into a fish at all. Maybe he's turning into a different animal entirely. When we look at those cold, dead eyes, the strange ones that look out, we know that they grow in various places, such as the roots of the Erd tree here. But also, if you've not stopped to look, the physical death root that grows out the floor around skeleton areas. So they actually have eyes growing out of them as well. Look, there's one, a nice clear one to look at. But here's the theory. What if he's not actually turning into a fish? What if it's nothing to do with that? What if he's actually turning into a giant basilisk? If we zoom in on the eyes here, take a look at that. It has that same inner ring as the eyes on the death root, on the eyes that grow out of the Erd tree, on the cold, dead eyes that are within Godwyn's face. Those fake, bubbly eyes that are not the true eyes of the basilisk, it looks just like Godwyn's dead eyes. Further, when we zoom in on the basilisk's tail, actually it kind of looks like a similar texture. It's also a little bit scaly. It's also got that kind of fishy nature to it. Could that also be what the tail is on Godwyn's current giant body? A giant basilisk tail. These creatures, the basilisk, they spread deathblight as well. So perhaps that's the basis of this strange animal-related transformation Godwyn's body is undertaking. I find this an interesting theory. I quite like it. What do you guys think? Next up, a really interesting one from two people in the comments. Firstly, from Mr. Blackblood666, who mentions that you can make use of the incantation Swarm of Flies here against these Iron Maidens super well. Now, apparently, all it takes is 4 casts of these Swarm of Flies, and then it will stun them, leaving them exposed. And so, sure enough, it does, and it reveals their weak spot in the middle. I imagine a few incantations, maybe some spells with basic posture of any kind damage would work well against these guys. They're a really annoying enemy, so having something like that to deal with them really helps. But then the second detail is something horrifying. It just tried to grab me, right? With whatever those things inside of it actually are. Reman Chen is back again to tell us what those actually are, and they're not tentacles as they might appear, but it turns out they're actually snakes. A bunch of different snakes that actually come out from the chest to grab you and bite you, and that's what's eating and damaging you while you're in there. Those snakes are also its weakness, so when you do stun it with, say, like we showed, the Swarm of Flies or something else, you can attack those and do bonus damage. So it actually seems like maybe those abductor virgins are being controlled by the snakes? It's a really weird detail that I've never stopped to really think about until now. They're essentially just a big machine that moves around attacking enemies, trying to grab them and abduct them. But it's all controlled by snakes on the inside. Look, they're going to grab these guys. And there's loads of them as well. I don't know what kind of weirdness actually causes these enemies to exist and function like this. It's very strange. Let me know if you have any theories. Okay, a tiny one, just as a little add-on, just for fun, because this one struck me. There was this massive comment on my most recent episode from SV Stoned, who gave so many interesting tips, many that I've actually included in this series, many that I hadn't talked about, really useful for new players, as well as some interesting ones that are definitely going to be introduced to this series. So thank you so much for that, SV. But why I'm only including one in this episode, and why it's only a little one, is because I'm embarrassed to acknowledge it, but I feel like I may as well have it in this series. It's obviously not a major one. When you rest at a bonfire, you can do some stuff, whatever, but when you're done with a bonfire and you want to go somewhere else, you leave the bonfire, leave the grace, pull open your map, and I don't know, go somewhere that you're planning on teleporting. Yep, I have hundreds of hours in this game, and I did not realize at any point, thank you very much again, SV Stoned, that while you're at the grace, you can open the map, and you can just teleport while sat at a grace. Didn't know that. Yeah, I feel really stupid. Figured I should put it in a video. But there you have it. That is my newest episode of Things You Didn't Know in Elden Ring, featuring some details, of course, about 1.07. If you guys have any things to do with the patch, anything interesting, unusual, different about the patch that might not be overtly obvious at first glance, or about the big picture of the game, again, small details, big details, whatever it is, if it's something most people don't know, if it's interesting, let me know in the comments. As always, if you enjoy this series and want to see it keep going, drop a like on the video. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.